Good evening, everyone. Chris Durrell here with patreon.com/Jagerbombs. Joining me tonight, Dane Chenault. How are you doing, buddy? We're back on YouTube. We were in the chat last week. We're back on YouTube this week. Are you ready for the big event, the Houston Open?
I am. A couple more weeks left till we get that break before the new year. So excited for this week. Hope we can close it out strong.
Yeah, for sure. So this week's course, the Memorial Park Golf Course. So this tournament dates back quite a bit, but the golf course itself, this is the second year Memorial Park Golf Course has hosted this event. Brooks Koepka helped, I believe it was Tom Doak, redesign it. Well, he was more of a consultant. Doak was the one who redesigned it. But one of the big things that changed, the only thing that really changed from last year was the ninth hole was shortened to 182. One thing Brooks talked about was the diversification in the par threes. And then the other thing that stands out is 5 of the 10 total par fours, 5 of the 6 that are 450 plus yards come in at 490 plus yards. So there's some really long par fours here. So myself, one thing I'm really concentrated on is long iron proximity if the guy doesn't have, extremely long distance. But looking at this field, the strokes gain approach is really big for me, birdie or better percentage. And then, of course, going to kind of dive in a little bit into those long iron proximities and performance on par 4. And we'll get into that here in a bit, looking at some fan share stuff, looking at some ownership, some projections, as well as looking at some trends with players using the Fantasy National Golf Club. And then first of all, let's look at the weather going into this week, because Houston can always be an issue with wind. So let's dive into that. First of all, Thursday, Friday, it looks really good. I think we've got 7 to 10 mile an hour winds both days, even less on Friday, and gusts. You're looking at gusts 15 to 20 at times, but it looks like birdie weather out there. I don't think it's going to affect too much. Temperatures in the 70s, so it looks like a pretty good week. I don't think we got to worry about weather at all.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Do you know right off about last year? I can't remember and haven't looked back. Was there much wind last year?
No, the one round there was. I don't have it up in front of me, but I did go through over on PGA Tour. Where were we here? I'll bring it up here, but I believe it was very similar to this, like 10 to 12 mile an hour. Nothing outrageous at all. I think there was the first 2 rounds, it got pushed back because of darkness, possibly. I think so. That kind of happened. The little bit of the delayed rounds. They had to finish the earlier round a couple times. I think twice. I'm just going to bring that up, and you can actually see that. Weather, partly cloudy, 48 miles an hour. Due to darkness, play was suspended early on the first day and the second day, but really the only day it was really windy was Sunday, and you were looking at like 10 to 15 miles an hour. Actually, Saturday was 15 to 20, but nothing too outrageous throughout the whole entirety. So it looks very similar this year. And looking at the course history here, like Carlos Ortiz won it at -13. Only 3 players got in the double digits last year. So that's kind of what I'm expecting this year. Any thoughts on that, or what your projection would be for like a winning score?
Yeah, I think we got to think that it's somewhere similar. There was, like you said, kind of a spread up from the top. Once you get to the top 5, everybody was bunched at 9, 8, 7 under par, and just a few people got to double digits. So
yep,
that's interesting to see. Not what you're looking at in the fall swing when we see tons of best.
You know what else was interesting when I was looking at that leaderboard last year and the player stats that I've got up right now was looking. I usually come down here and I like to compare the guys that make the cut, top 25 and top 10, looking at just the average driving distance, driving accuracy, greens, and regulation are the 3 that I look at. As you got in from the cut makers to the top 10 is like a 1.5% difference worse in terms of driving accuracy, and the greens and regulation went up 4%. So that was kind of interesting. That has me once again for the 3rd week in a row looking at good drive percentage, because I don't think hitting the greens hitting the fairways, is crucial. Hitting the greens is always crucial if you want to make birdies, Dane. I don't do that very often. But yeah, looking at specific players here, Carlos Ortiz won, hitting only 50%. 8 of the top 10 players were under 60% driving accuracy, and Sepp Straka and Mackenzie Hughes hit under 50%. How Mackenzie Hughes, his putter just is absolutely amazing, because he only had 55% greens in regulation last year and just putted the lights out and got that top 10. Talk about him in a bit. I'm kind of looking for something very similar. But a lot of these guys average right around 300 or over, so no one's really dialing back by any means, just because I think, the rough isn't as penal this week. You're not going to have to worry about it missing as much, and that's why I'm looking at good drive percentage.
Yeah, I like it. I'm ready to hop into the upper range of plays if you are.
I sure am. I got my plays here on the screen this week with the rankings and the model and stuff like that. If you want to see, we got the rankings, bet card, prize picks plays, that sort of stuff up as well each and every week going into, obviously we've only got a couple weeks left here of the fall season, but going into the Tournament of Champions in January and then pretty much every single week until the end of the year. You can join us for PGA for $10 a month, patreon.com/Jagerbombs. Or if you play multiple sports, we've got sheets and content and coaches for 10 plus sports right now. So you can join us for $20 a month there. All right, let's dig in. Top number one in my model this week is Sam Burns. I've got these top tier. It's the first time I've done this in a while where I don't have a core play necessarily for me. I only played one lineup last week. I didn't get my fan share 20 max in that we built on the show. But I did play my one. Cash games went well, even with the 5 to 6, with Varner missing by a stroke there on Friday. That really hurt. But this week I'm going balanced. You can tell that right away. Gooch and Wise and Leishman are kind of three that I'm looking at, kind of in that mid range to kind of build a core around. Gooch and Wise have both been playing very, very well. They're both in form. They both did very well here last year. They're both good ball strikers around the green. Like they're two of the highest guys in around the green and on the green. So I think that gives them a lot of safety for those prices. I think those guys could be a little bit higher in price. But how do you feel about this top tier? I love mixing them in GPPs, but for cash games, me personally, I like a balanced approach this week.
Yeah, I think when you get down to the 6K range, it's really not very good. So the balance builds definitely have some merit this week. I do lean there in like a single entry type build, but up top I do have to lean towards Sam Burns just with that form, and did get some experience here last year with the top 10, 7th place. So gotta like him the most at the very top. After that, I think Sungjae would be the second favorite. It's very close between he and Matthew Wolff. Wolff is coming in very good form off of a struggle last year. So got to have a little bit of interest in him. But I think I'm going to end up, like you said, starting in this 9K range. And there's a lot of guys that I'm excited to look at here and get your thoughts on. Because I think I could make a case for every single player in this 9K range. Brooks, like you said, has a little hand in this course redesign. 5th here last year. I guess the question is about the form, and I mean, I guess this would be the one stop on the fall swing that he is engaged, just because of the course deal. So I think he's a fine GPP play. Still a little torn on if I would go to him in a 3-entry max or something like that. Adam Scott, I think, makes a lot of sense as well at 9,600, coming in off a 5th place finish here in the fall. Last time out was at the CJ Cup. I'd have to look back here.
For Adam Scott?
Yeah.
I'll
CJ
bring up his
Cup
card here.
T5 there. T35 at the Shriners. So coming in decent form. I know he's not played a ton, but after a few weeks off, he's a guy that always takes quite a bit of time off. So I wouldn't hold that against him coming back here. Neiman, we saw his upside last week. I think you got to be interested in him. And then you mentioned 2 on-fire plays with course history from last year, Gooch and Wise. We talked about Wise on the show last week about how he had just turned so consistent and popped another top 15 in there for us last week. 9,200, I think, is definitely fair, and had some good experience here last year. So as you can tell, I'm very scattered in this range. As of now, I think my favorite 2 are going to be Wise Wise and Gooch like you. But right there on there would be Neiman and Adam Scott for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on those guys too. And when it comes to Koepka this week, I've kind of decided, looking at ownership specifically is what kind of had me going this way. Obviously, he's number one in tags, but he's projected to be like in that 18 to 20% range, like the highest by far. Him and Gooch and Wise are obviously about 18 to 22. Probably they're going to fall as three of the top five in ownership. With like, let's just bring it up here. His irons have been terrible. He just doesn't seem to find it, and he hasn't been great around the greens. He hasn't been great putting. He's obviously gaining strokes off the tee. He does that very well. But at that ownership, I just feel like there's a lot of variance in his play. And I know I didn't really think of the engagement part because he had his hand in this course. But at that ownership, just with DFS and how much variance there is, I think there's better spots, guys with similar or the same upside that are going to be half the ownership. So that's where I've decided to include Brooks in my bet card, because I do like the number at 33 to 1 if you can still get it around there for betting. But for DFS, I think I'm out on that ownership. I feel more comfortable with guys that are coming in, like we said here, Gooch and Wise, who bring up here side by side here. First of all, we'll look at Wise. His irons, his whole just ball striking tee to green game has been absolutely incredible lately. Backed it up, T15 last week, so that was good to see. As for Gooch, another good putter. Not as consistent lately with the putter, but the irons have been absolutely on fire, gaining 5+ strokes in 3 of his last 6. I would assume he probably gained 3 to 5 strokes at Mayakoba, I would think. There's no strokes gained data there, but that's what I would think would be another positive for him there. So I just like those numbers with them. Adam Scott is very, very interesting. I'm definitely on board. Those irons have been on. I think, does he have course history here? Did he play here last year at all? I have him on my list.
I think so. Yeah. 32nd here last year.
Okay, so he was here. I mean, at this point, 1 year sample size, it isn't anything really. I've got it like 5% of my model, that course history. So not that big, and I don't have him marked down now. But again, I'm with you where I like a lot of these guys where if I was doing 20 max or more, I'd have a little bit larger player pool than normal with maybe not a lot, but a lot on some guys, less exposure to those core guys, because I just do like some of these. In terms of ownership pivots here, because I think we do see some ownership with Burns. I think we see some Cam Smith ownership. And then, of course, like we talked about, Koepka, Gooch, and Wise. Sung J M looks like he's going to be low owned here. And if we bring up kind of his card and just see how things are going there for him, it's going to be hard to count him out at that ownership. So he's someone I've got on just kind of today, monitoring the ownership. I mean, the irons have been a little bit off, and the irons have been off, and he's got a top 10 at the CJ Cup. He was excellent at the Shriners, and he won. The irons were off T31 at Sanderson. So when he dials it up with his irons, he's right there. Like the irons and the putting, that's what gets me at the CJ Cup there. So I think he can turn around. Just it's more of a leverage play for me. And then the other leverage play that I really, really like that's going to be low owned here, I'll scroll down on FanShare, is Russell Henley. He's actually come up and he's been trending quite a bit here recently. He's at about 10 to 12%. They've got him at about 12 right now, which I like. What's not been really going right for him lately has been the putter. I was going to bring up his card here because he's been playing really, really well. He rates out really well on the sheet. Let's go over to him here. He's 9th in my model, T29 last year. So again, like Adam Scott, he didn't miss the cut. He didn't have a top of the leaderboard finish by any means. It's more the low ownership for me, plus his top 10 upside at that price I do like. And Bermuda, look at that. Bermuda's his best putting for sure in terms of splits. The irons are absolutely red hot here, and the putting's been absolutely terrible. So, if he's going to be low owned and he's going to be hitting a lot of greens, giving himself a ton of opportunities, even that T56 last week, he put up almost 10x return on DraftKings. So I'm definitely going to be going back to him if he's going to be around 10% when guys like, Koepka and the other high-owned guys are going to be around 20%. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely some good pivots in this range. I think he's one of them. we've already talked in length about Adam Scott being one of them down there at half or less than half the ownership of some of these guys. Definitely like that play. And there's some more in the 8K range that I really like too. So I'm like you. I'm leaning much more toward this balance type build this week and see what happens at the end of the week. And if there's a value play that is popular that pops off for a top 15, then so be it. But Mark Leishman, I know you've mentioned him. I like him as well. Always seems to have some good form in the fall. Does again here. McNeely, Power, Shane Lowry, and Lanto Griffin are all on my radar as well in the 8K range. McNeely just keeps churning out decent finishes here. Really trimmed, played here last year, 20th. Seamus Power has just had a nice year. Even continued it since his win. Obviously, he had a few down weeks, but he's really came right back with 2 top 12s in his last 2. Shane Lowry has really overall had a very strong year. Missed the cut last time out. I think, what's his ownership look like? I think
13 to 15.
Yeah, so maybe getting a little ownership discount compared to what it would be if he would have played well last time out. So I like him. And then Lanto Griffin looking to be sub 10% coming off of a decent finish last time out as well. So like to see that. 8,100. I'll definitely pay that with back-to-back top 7s here in October.
And then right below that, I like Mackenzie Hughes. Like I said before, I kind of mentioned in my article, you really don't want to look at your stats model for this one because he's not going to show up in your stats model whatsoever. He's an elite putter, absolutely elite putter, and that gives him a high floor. You can tell here he's made 10 straight cuts in a row and really only gained strokes putting 3 times. Actually, the Open, I guess we could count, he probably, and the Zozo. So let's say 5 times. So 50% of the time he's gaining strokes, and not a lot of strokes when he does gain strokes. And he is just churning out cut after cut after cut. I like the price. I think we can use him in cash games. Sweet Spot, how's it going, buddy? Thanks for coming in and commenting. Appreciate it. And then below that, there's some interesting plays here that I do like. Pivoting off of, is it time to get on Mito Pereira? He's going to be low owned. We were talking about him earlier in the year. He was churning out top 10s here, top 5s. There was so much upside. Now the sentiment's going away from Pereira. I like betting him. Odds here, he's at 71 on the sheet. I think he's down to 65 to 1. I put a bet in on him. He was a guy that was in that 25 to 40 to 1 range for quite a while there when he, in that earlier in the season. So getting him at that price for betting wise, I really like. And then I think the ownership, if we go down and check it out here, not too bad. So he's right in kind of that same range, around that 10 to 12, 13% range, where kind of that second tier, I'd like to call it. I think the top tier guys are going to be, you're going to see like 5 players in that 17 to 20%, probably even up to 22% range. And then you're going to have that next tier down, 10 to 15%, probably somewhere in there. And there's going to be quite a few guys in there. And I think Mito is probably going to be one of those guys. I thought he'd be a little bit lower on, so I do like the bet a little bit better at the number that he's at. But how about going back to Harold Varner? So there's 2 guys here I want your opinion on, because I think I thought we could get low ownership. I'm pretty sure recency bias is going to give us some low ownership on Varner, who burned everyone. I heard so many times last week, never playing Varner again. And then I logged in after talking to myself in the mirror, and I heard it even more in chat. So I could have had a really good week with him last week. I'm sure a lot of people are feeling that way with the builds with him last week. So I think I'm going back there in my GPP build. I'm even considering in cash just because he still pops in every part of the model. He was good here last year. The form besides last week, he only missed by 1 stroke. It was kind of due to a slow start, but some up and down play, a couple bogeys on Friday afternoon as well. I think on the early part of the back 9 really hurt him. But what's your opinion on those 2 guys bouncing back?
Yeah, love both of those guys. Mito, these are obviously projected ownerships. I think we could see a little lower on Varner, especially kind of like you talked about. Mito, I mean, I think this is with him, it's a mix of the price and the ownership. If this was 2 weeks ago, he would be in the mid 8Ks, and he would be up in that wise Gooch type ownership at 18-19%. Now we're getting probably $800 discount, and we're also getting an ownership discount to near 10%. So I really like going back to Mito. Feels kind of similar. Both of these guys kind of feel similar to the Neiman play last week. Neiman was priced right around this range, and Crush. I think it's a very similar type play, but getting the discount on these guys. There is another guy I want your take on right below him, Brandon Grace, 7,600. I know he played horrid here last year, but if you look back at the last year, I don't think he was in as good of a form as he is coming in right now. Had a very strong 2021, picked up that win early in the year, has been playing overseas in September, played the 3 events on the Euro Tour and played decent there. So he's not had tons of time off, and came back in Japan and got that T7 last time out a few weeks back. So I think I like Grace as a pivot. What's his ownership at? 5%.
Could be low.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I really like that then. Should be the lowest owned in that range. People are going to look back. Scroll down there and let's look at his form coming in last year to this event.
Okay, Houston, what are we looking for? There we are. Yeah, look at all those missed cuts.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, he was playing that last year. 2020 was one of the, I remember because I used to play him a lot, like 18, 19. And then 20, he had that horrid year. And then he picked up the win there at Puerto Rico in February. And he's really strung together quite a few good finishes after that. 4 top 10s since, including at the Zozo. So, yeah, I like that. Not sure where he gained strokes because his iron play was horrid 3 weeks prior to that. And not sure what he did in September either on the Euro Tour. Hard to quantify. But like to see that 7th and low ownership on him.
I like to see the putting splits, too. Like, he loses a ton of strokes on bent. He isn't good. He's a negative putter on POA. But he is slightly positive on Bermuda. So, that's good news coming in as well if you're looking at putting splits this week, if you want to look at that as well. So I guess I didn't really factor in Grace, so maybe that's the one guy that you get me on every week that I maybe overlooked myself. I think a lot of people will look at that 119th last year, that miscut, and, not maybe go back, like you said, and look at the form coming in this year versus the form last year. I know some guys that maybe that doesn't matter, and I said that about Russell Knox last week, and look what happened there. So totally wrong there. But I like that call with Grace. He ranks high in my model. 32nd is pretty good for a guy at 7,600. I'm with that for sure. And then there's not really a lot of guys in this low 7K range. I go down more. I'm on Joel Damon this week a lot. I had his card up here. I don't have it up anymore. But looking at the strokes gained approach, he's 16th. He's 18th when you're looking at long irons. Par 3s, 25th, 22nd in the long par 4 ranges, and then 14th in birdie or better percentage, and 29th in putting. So he kind of hits on a lot of things that I like, even though he's not a great putter overall. He's gained strokes in 2 of his last 3 that counted. Mayakoba, I think he was in the top half of the putting, better than the average. But the form coming in is pretty good. He's made 8 of his last 9 cuts. Just solid, and I'm using him in my cash game lab this week at 7K, just with him just making a ton of cuts lately. And not just making the cut, but throwing in some top 25s, top 30s in there as well. Making a lot of birdies.
Yeah, I mentioned it in the beginning. I'm not really keen on this low range, but there are some plays. And, man, if we could find a mid 6K guy, 6,600 and below to be exact, I could make a lineup with 3 of those 9K guys fit perfectly. If I don't find one that I'm comfortable with, I can come off of one of those down into that 8K range I love, and get another mid 7K guy. So really liking the way that my core is shaping up, and I'll let those 4 out here in a minute. But in this low range, we've Joel Damon. I think you gotta like him. A guy for GPPs, couple guys for GPPs that I like. Ian Poulter, 7,300. Taylor Moore, coming off the Korn Ferry Tour, 7,100 for him. I know you like Harry Higgs. I'll let you touch on him. Luke List is another guy that you could consider. But really, after that, man, there is not many options in the 6K range that I'm liking. So unless we can find one together, I'm leaning toward dropping one of those 9K guys.
I just really like Denny McCarthy, and I'm considering using him in cash too. He is, to me, looking at things here, he is Mackenzie Hughes. Like, it's pretty much, I'm just going to repeat what he said. He's a really good putter, although, the last 12 rounds, it hasn't been great, but he is, look on the sheet here, long-term. I love the form. Sprinkled in top 20s, top 15s pretty much, 15th, 17th, and 15th. 3 of his last 7 made cuts and 4 of his last 7, so that rate isn't great. T38 here last year. Nothing really stands out, but the putting on Bermuda is just absolutely amazing. The putting overall around the green, same kind of things I said with Hughes, is that just gives you a high floor. Now, the positive thing with him is he's a heck of a lot cheaper than Mackenzie Hughes. And that miscut at the Shriners, that was only by 1 stroke, or else this little run that he's on right here looks a lot better. That would be, a 3, 7 of his last 8 made cuts with 4 top 20s in there. So if he made that one there. But I just like the price. 6,600 just seems a little bit too cheap for that. I think he could be, together, Hughes is a little bit overpriced. McCarthy's a little bit underpriced. They probably gel somewhere together in that low 7K range. So I do like McCarthy here. Sepp Straka, always GPP pivots, dangerous, but can get you a top 20, top 25. He got a top 5 here last year. He was one of the players that, with Mackenzie Hughes, that missed under 50% of fairways. But he used his distance. He gained some strokes with his distance on this course, is where a lot of his top 5. He had a lot of shorter approaches coming in. So Adam Long is another one that stands out to me. T29, T25, T22, and 3 of his last 4, and a T11 here last year. Again, a little bit risky, but he is a good putter as well. So those are some 3 guys that I like down in this lower range. McCarthy would be my favorite, then Long, then Straka. There is nothing I'm really liking below that. I was kind of looking a little bit at like Lee Hodges, some top 25. Some of these rookies, again, like we talked about last week, some of these rookies that are coming in low priced right now, coming off the Korn Ferry Tour, that not many people know. They're not playing in DFS, but these guys do have, they go out and get a top 10 or 2, and then boom, they're all of a sudden in the conversation in that 7-8K range, mid 7 to mid 8K range on DraftKings. So,
yeah, what about one more guy I'll mention right at that price point, Windham Clark. Just to throw a name out there, he's been decent for 6,600.
Yeah,
but yeah,
again, he's sprinkling in top 25s, top 30s. These guys obviously down here aren't going to be. We're not going to find the consistency week after week from some of these guys.
Right.
So if we can just pick out here and there the good performances, and then just find a few things, I think you just kind of got to fit with a couple of them and go with it. Again, I'm looking at. Good drive percentage was another thing with Denny McCarthy that stood out. He's 11th in good drive percentage. You mentioned Windham Clark, so that would be one difference for me right there. Clark a little bit more on the distance side than the accuracy is where that comes from. But McCarthy has been really good around the green. Again, 12th in par 4 scoring versus Windham Clark, not bad. He's a par 3 guy, so that would stand out for a course that has 5 par 3s. But for me, it's definitely Denny McCarthy down in this range. Other guys, talked about Sepp Straka. Again, he doesn't really stand out much. I mean, he's got the distance, but he also stands out in proximity. Well, I'd love to know that sample size on that proximity from 200 plus, because a guy with that much distance isn't going to be shooting from 200 plus that often. So definitely looking at that. So this model is just the 2022 season. And yeah, that's what I was going to show earlier. It's a little late for this, Dane, but Mito Pereira, second in strokes to gain, tee to green still in this field over the season. That goes way back. So if you want to rewind and go back to where I talked about Mito, throw that in there. Anyone you're betting this week, any other bets? Or actually, before we get into betting and some of your top bets, I need to hear your core four.
Yeah, so my core four, I'll give my core three and then give you the option, or whoever the option on the fourth one, because it's still much a toss up for me here. Adam Scott is going to be first for me. Love that lower ownership. Mito is going to be the other piece. Brandon Grace is another piece, and the fourth piece is going to be your pick between Aaron Wise and Taylor Gooch. That leaves you, if you go Gooch, it leaves you 7,900 on average. You can do quite a few different fun builds there with one of the 7K guys we've talked about. Hint, Harold Varner. And one of those 8K guys that we talked about, I think there was like 4 of them that I like in that range. Lowry, you can really make that balanced build work. You don't even have to go below 7,600 if you didn't want to with that build.
I've got a 3-player build that I'm going with. Gooch and Wise, obviously, they were green on the sheet. And then Joel Damon as well. That leaves you an 8,166. I would use that same core on FanDuel as well if anyone's playing FanDuel out there. So then there's a couple ways you can go with that. You can either stay that balanced like I talked about. If you want to play, and I'm just going to drag this over here. Looks like it's too small. So let me blow that up. So there is the core. So this leaves you really wide open to kind of go your own route. But these are definitely my 3 favorite. And if you're building a 20 max, I could definitely run this 3-player core 20 times. And probably run half stars and scrubs and half balance, because you go and you throw Sam Burns in, leaves you still 6,700. Now, I talked about McCarthy, so I'm just going to kind of build one out here. This isn't going to be my cash lineup or my single entry at all. It's 6,800. There's a lot of guys in that 6,800. I think I've got 3, maybe 4 highlighted down there. If you just want to go, like you said, Adam Scott, we talked about him. Even if you wanted to make that pivot to Henley, like I talked about, you could go that route. You're left with 7,800 for two guys in here now. So you can go Mito and Hughes. Like, there's so many different ways you can go with that 3-player core. So that's definitely the way I'm going to be going. And then to cap things off here, I do have a few prize picks plays for those that are in here, and they are Sam Burns, Cam Smith, Sung J M, and Adam Scott on the under. 16.5, 18.5, 19.5, and 25.5. For Adam Scott would be my favorite. If you want me to rank these, it would be Adam Scott, then Burns, Smith, and Sungjae. Whoops. We need to have that's Scheffler. Dane, what am I doing here? I don't like Scheffler. Not that number. I'm just not 100% on Scheffler this week. But Adam Scott, he needed top 25 finish. He's been doing that recently. And looking at the Vegas odds, just kind of every week I go and compare. His top 20 number is like plus 140. So his top 25 would probably be in that plus 110. He's got one of the highest top 20s of the guys that have like a top 20 number listed on Prize Picks. So that is definitely where I'm going. And then from a betting perspective, long shot, I mentioned betting Mito. I do like that. But going up the board a little bit, Gooch and Wise, I'll be betting both of them. Other than that, I like the number on Aaron Wise was actually pretty nice. I think it's gone down now, but like for a top 20, I think it was like plus 160 at one point. If you could get on, it might be plus 150 now, plus 145, something like that. I'm even fine with that. And I play those top 20s a lot like a cash pick, like a cash game lineup or whatever. Just look for a little bit of safety and put, if I put $20 on a top 20, if I'm betting like $5 on outrights or whatever, so it's like 4 times what I bet on an outright, I'll bet on those just because they're a little bit safer. Bankroll builders, we'll call them. Any specific bets that stand out to you, long shots or favorites?
I think Mito 80-1 just seems like.
If you can get 81, that is awesome. I love it.
I don't know how you don't click that button. But and then I was hoping Varner. I don't know what you see with Varner's number, but I'm seeing 50 to 1. I was hoping that'd be a little bit closer. I'm surprised those aren't flipped, to be honest. Varner and Nico.
49 plus
28, and that would kind of be what I'm looking at.
Ooh, I got Adam Scott at 34. That's a big one.
Nice.
I like that discrepancy there for sure. So I might even jump on that actually. I've really been on Adam Scott here. It's just been trending uphill all day long today. Like since 5:30 this morning when I woke up, I was thinking about Adam Scott. Seriously. And I don't know why, but all day long I just been looking at little things and just like listening to a couple shows. I think Sweet Spot, I think you talked about Adam Scott at one point. You had mentioned him. He showed up on your sheet or on your screen. I was like, oh man. And then got towards the show, and I haven't highlighted him yet, but he'll be there, everyone. He'll be there. He's 7th in my overall ranking. So I do like that number at plus 34.
This is a major sign here.
Yeah, it is, right? It's coming.
And on top of all that, I always fade Adam Scott, it feels like, but
not this week.
Not this week. This is a all-in spot.
Okay, if we're doing this, I hope that he either is like crushing it on Thursday and Friday. We're like, yeah, this is awesome. It's going to be a fun weekend. Or he's like withdraws or is dead last. I hope this isn't a Friday afternoon, back 9. He needs 2 birdies down the stretch to make it, or he just needs to par out or something. I don't want to have that sweat.
Yeah, don't even speak that, Chris.
Okay, sorry. I won't mush us yet, or else I'm going to have a Friday afternoon show and apologize to everyone. That's maybe we'll have a Friday sweat show, and we'll just call it the apology show.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Jagerbombs apologies. Just like, is that Jimmy Kimmel that sits there and writes apologies at his desk or whatever?
Right.
I'll do that. Sorry for picking Adam Varner Adam Varner. Harold Varner this week. Make a whole episode out of it.
That's another sign. All right.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I think that wraps it up. Let's go build some lineups here. I know I need to get to some NBA article and some late night lineups here for that. So let's go wrap it up and let's go get some green screens this week. Good luck, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Dane.
Yeah, no problem. Good luck.
Good luck this week.